Love between humans is just not easy. And without great examples or education about emotions, communication, sex, and what keeps love alive, it's too easy to be disheartened, settle, or give up on what you want most. I believe you can have the love and intimacy you want. And having coached thousands of people on their love lives for over 20 years, I know what love can be for you. So I'm bringing you people who share vulnerably about their dating and relationship struggles and how they learn to create the most connected, fulfilling, and exciting love and sex of their lives, so you can have it too. Hello, and welcome to this episode. This is going to be a joint episode of Practicing Love and Man Alive. And I'm excited today to talk about what I've been doing with Practicing Love is interviewing experts on their struggles in love and what they've learned and what they're now practicing. And I couldn't not do this as a joint episode with Man Alive because I have Dr. Fred Rabinowitz here, who wrote a book called Man Alive a couple decades ago. And you've been in the field of men's work, writing books about deepening psychotherapy for men and actually doing psychotherapy with men. And it just feels like, we've got to we've got to use all of your wisdom here. So thank you for being willing to be on in both a vulnerable, personal and professional role.
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. So, all right, let's start with the personal. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of relationship are you in, or is there anything notable about your relationship now or how you got here?
Yeah. It's obviously a big story, but I'm married. I met my current wife, Janet, back in 1987 in an accidental encounter.
Okay.
Where I was going to a bioenergetics workshop up in Whistler, British Columbia. Uh-huh. And so this is actually kind of a fun story. And I went to the condos where I was supposed to stay, and they said to me, Fred, sorry, we don't have your room. Tomorrow we'll have one. So we're going to put you up in this hotel downtown in downtown Whistler, which is a ski resort. And so I said, okay, whatever. I've been traveling all day. I went down there and I had a roommate who was asleep at the time. It's about 9:30, 10 at night. So I put my stuff in and I'm starving. So I walked down into the middle of town. It's a little town, it's a ski resort.
Yeah.
And I saw some lights on in this place that looked like a restaurant. So I walked in and there's Janet sitting at the bar, having a glass of wine, talking to the bartender. And I just go, can I get something to eat here? That was it. So it turned out she told me this was like the one question she would have answered from me as a tourist.
Yeah.
Because she used to run that restaurant and she owned a restaurant across the street and she was on a 10-minute break.
Oh my gosh.
Cooking for the next day because she had a breakfast lunch place.
Wow.
And so she was just there. It was like a total
fate.
And so we started talking and I was kind of, I got to eat and she's like, I have to go. I have to go back over to my place. I said, I'll walk over with you. So we continued talking and ended up having this really hot affair for the week.
Affair, meaning not that you were cheating on other people, but
meaning it was like, I was single, she was single.
We're just clarifying here.
Yeah. So we ended up, I'd go to the workshop and then in the evening catch up with her, and we had a really nice sexual relationship. And the whole idea for both of us was, this is just for this week. I'll never see you again. This is it. And so it allowed both of us, because of those parameters, to be open.
Yeah.
It was like, I was just,
you're not needing to impress someone if you're not trying to make them your partner.
Right. No, it was just more like, let's enjoy the week, and she had been divorced. I had been divorced. So it was like, we had been around, but hadn't really had that connection in a while. And so
how many years ago was that?
That was in 1987.
Amazing. Yeah. Did either of you have kids from your previous marriage?
No kids.
Okay.
And so what I ended up doing, I left, said goodbye, never see you again probably. And then about 2 months later, it was like October, of, that year, I was thinking about her and I had her phone number and I called her. I said, hey, I was thinking about you. And she's like, I'm going to be in Mexico, but I could stop by maybe in California and see you on the way back. And I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Nice.
So that was like our next kind of thing. So we kind of long distance dated for a while.
Amazing. And, having relationship after divorce, I've been divorced myself. And I know that, there are many things that can come into the field or into the dynamic, right? From, oh my God, is this even worth it, to, trust issues, to whatever. Would you say that either one of you came in less than whole, which I think we all do, but you know what I mean?
I mean, I think for both of us, I think had I been a permanent resident of where Janet lived, I'm not sure she would have been as open with me.
Interesting.
So I think for her, it was like a release in some ways. And for me too, because I was away, I didn't really have to worry about the kind of the consequences of all of that.
Yes.
I had been doing my own therapy. The divorce that I came out of was when I was in grad school.
Okay.
And it was someone who I had met in college, and we stayed together and we sort of split apart and then ended up back together in Columbia, Missouri, where I was doing my grad program. She was also doing a grad program there.
Yeah. Okay.
And it never felt quite right to me. We went through the whole process. We got married.
It doesn't sound like it was like a horribly bad, awful breakup, or am I?
No, I mean, well, here's what it was. And again, this speaks to my development in relationship. I was much more of I would call it dependent person. She was very assertive. And so she was really good at saying, you should do this, or you should do that, or say more about that. And so I was just very reactive in that relationship. And I knew that I didn't have the balls to kind of like get out of it either.
Interesting.
So I felt kind of stuck there.
Yeah.
Then this is an ironic thing. She ended up cheating on me.
Oh, wow.
And I found out about it.
Yeah.
And that was all of a sudden I had a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
And I took it.
You used it. You took it. Well, I mean, I think this speaks to, right, and we can transition into a struggle that you've had, because it sounds like, at least back then, I don't know if you'd say it continues now, but there was the theme of, okay, I didn't have the balls to actually say what I wanted or needed. Mm-hmm. I kind of went along with things, and maybe even you were drawn to powerful women for that reason.
Yes. That's a good interpretation. And I also had this sense that when she betrayed me, I felt like I had permission at that point to just do whatever I needed to do.
Yes.
And so I got out of that. I got out of the marriage.
Interesting that it took something that big for you to feel like, oh, I can take care of myself, or I can do what I need to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I had about a year there where I was single. I dated a woman like 10 years older than me. I did, I kind of experimented.
Explored a little bit.
And then came out to California on a 1-year visiting professor job, going, I just want to go out there and sort of make my life whatever it's going to be, like be on the journey. I didn't know anybody. I knew one friend out in this area, and it was just me and my dog. And I just said, I want to go see what's going to be.
That's great. Okay, so can we stay on the theme of struggle, and we can either talk about weaving in, I think, what you've seen with men, because you've worked with thousands of men, and how men identify and what men learn and don't learn, and also your own personal journey. Like, would you say that struggle around speaking up for yourself or claiming what you need, would you say that's one of the biggest struggles, or do you want to talk about it?
I would say there's different guys express it in different ways. Yeah. I tend to be a nice guy. I tend to be supportive. I tend to, I'm a psychologist. I think that, I had to, as a young man, I listened to my mother. She had her own issues, and sometimes I was the one she confided in. I was the catcher on the baseball team. So I had to like calm down the pitchers in high school. So I had this kind of sense that I was going to end up in a people oriented, world.
Yes.
But what I didn't have was a sense of like where I stood. I was really good at reading where other people were at.
Yeah.
And so that first marriage I was good at kind of figuring out what she wanted me to be, and I was willing to do that. And I do work with guys who are more passive in that way and allow their partner to define what that relationship's about. Yeah. And they end up depressed or unhappy or drinking and end up kind of needing to process all that. And so I think I'm good with those kind of guys.
You can have those kind of conversations because you can relate to some of that.
Exactly. And then the other guys, at the other polar end are the guys that like are so afraid that they take control of the relationship, and they're the ones who define what's going to happen in the marriage or in the relationship. And they find that they're unhappy as well because they want their partners to be more with them and feel more connected, but they don't realize that part of what they're doing is pushing that person away or shutting them down. And I understand that position.
Well, and I love what you just said. You just quickly said it, which was that they're so afraid that they take control.
Right.
So it sounds like you see taking control, that underneath that there is a fear and anxiety.
Yes, totally. And that's one of the things that I think gets misread with men, because even kind of controlling, powerful, whatever kind of men oftentimes are doing that more as a reaction to not wanting to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Because they've been hurt, because they've been wounded in some way. My style of just being more open and trying to do what somebody else wants is also a way to protect vulnerability.
Right.
I'm not going to reveal anything or do anything that's going to get me in trouble.
Yeah.
So I will play it safe.
Yes.
And obviously the combination of the two are really important.
The combination of
being able to say where you're at.
Yeah.
Be vulnerable enough that you could get hurt.
Yeah.
But also open to where the other person is coming from.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that, there's component parts here that need to be as a whole man. I need to have all of that.
Totally. And then that leads me to wonder, okay, so how have you worked with that in yourself? And then how have you worked with that with the many, many men you've been in groups and individual sessions?
Yeah. I think for myself, I think that journey for me to come to California by myself was my statement of, Fred, you're going to define your reality. You're going to be the one. You have no one to rely on to tell you what to do.
Yep.
And so you're going to go into this new environment and you're going to create something. So for me, it's like life's a journey, and I embrace that the whole way. I still feel that way.
Okay.
And everything as I look back makes me, believe in that. Yeah. I'm not necessarily religious, but I'm also very much like, if I trust myself in the present, if I trust where I'm going and make decisions, and I'm willing to learn from my experience, then this is an amazing experience. The whole trip.
Love that.
It never happens.
Yeah.
And that makes me less afraid to be vulnerable. It makes me less afraid to say where I'm going. It makes me less afraid to confront someone when it feels like there's a mismatch or, disconnection.
Yeah. Can you speak to how that happens in your marriage or when there are those moments?
Yeah. And I think right now what I have learned, by the way, my Janet is from rural Western Nebraska.
Wow.
She grew up on a 400-acre farm.
Oh my God. Okay?
And went to a one-room country schoolhouse. I grew up in Philly.
Okay.
And I'm like, I ended up in the suburbs, but I grew up in the city and, went to high school in a very urban area and have a Jewish background. She's not Jewish. So it's like I ended up with someone who is very different.
Very different. Uh-huh.
And part of that's safety, okay, I don't have any of the expectations, or she doesn't have expectations of me in the same way as if we grew up in the same town.
Interesting. So that created some safety for you.
It created some safety. And it's also interesting to me. Now the downside is sometimes I don't always feel understood.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to explain where I'm coming from because of my upbringing, because of the way I grew up in a Jewish family with all brothers and all this kind of stuff. And the same for her.
Yes.
Like sometimes she just needs to be at peace. She needs quiet. She needs for her, fantasy would be to go out on the plane and have it just the sunset.
All that vision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what I've had to learn is that, and this is relevant, I think, to the relationship thing, because it's really interesting to me. We have intimacy, but we also have separateness.
Mm-hmm.
And she is very supportive of me being fully myself and doing whatever I want. I don't feel any restriction on my life.
Great.
And I do the same for her. I mean, she may feel some restriction, just out of her own own needs. But from my perspective, it's like, whatever you need to do, you do.
Yeah.
And we will make dates and come together to be together. But
so it's more intentional when you come together versus we're just always going to be together.
Yes. And I see guys a lot of times who are either bummed out that their partner doesn't want to hang out with them, or that they don't have that kind of instant, understanding of each other, or once the sex part isn't as hot, they just feel like they're not that interested.
Tell us what you do with all of that, because it's natural to go through all of these different phases. And I do believe that sex and intimacy can, flourish for our lifetime. It looks different in different ways, but it's such a common thing to come up against these edges.
No, I agree. And that's why, and this is where I'm going with this, is that when I did a lot of my own therapeutic work. So I was in some groups, I did some bioenergetics, I did my own individual therapy, and I've been running this men's group for 38 years.
Yeah, amazing.
And doing my practice. And so, I've seen a lot of guys, but one of the things one of the truths that I've learned is that one person can't meet all your needs. Yeah. I mean, that's like sort of one of those basic things, and everybody says it, but what does that really mean? How do
you really embody that or live that?
Exactly. And so for me, it's like, knowing yourself well enough to know what your needs are is important. And a lot of guys haven't really explored that. Yeah. And so they act it out, and then after the fact go, I guess I needed that.
Yeah. It's a big thing that I work on with my clients who are men, is like, okay, well, what do you actually want? And
yes,
I really thought about that. I haven't given myself permission to think about that.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And the other part is that what I've learned is that I can get my needs met by lots of different people in different ways, in different environments. Yeah. And so I bring myself to wherever I go, my presence. And this is something more recent too, is like I've begun to realize, obviously I can't escape myself, but I feel like I bring value, I bring intimacy, I bring connection to wherever I go. Yeah. And so I'm not alone. I don't feel lonely.
That is so powerful, that stance of I bring it. I'm not just like hoping for it. I actually bring it.
Right. I bring it. Yeah. And that's why I think I'm a good therapist. That's why I think I've been doing the group for so long. I think that's why I'm a good professor, is because I care about the students. I'm interested in their world. I like the interaction. If I'm just walking to a coffee shop and somebody's in there, I'll talk to them. Yeah. And so there's this kind of sense that I can get my needs met in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. And therefore I take the pressure off my partner.
Your primary partner. Right. I was thinking about that when I was in my 20s, and I used to go to these all-night dance parties, which I don't do anymore. Mm-hmm. And there was a kind of a group of us, and I was watching how the people who seemed to have the most enjoyment weren't standing there kind of hoping and waiting. They were creating experiences for other people. Yes. They were bringing what you were saying, that vulnerability, the intimacy, the hey, what do you want out of tonight?
Right.
Let's go create that together instead of always.
It's a more active approach. Mm-hmm. But it's also one that you don't have, I don't have expectations. I might talk to somebody who's really quiet, or I might talk to someone who really surprises me by what they say. Yeah. Or I may just feel like one day I'm I'm the one who gets, kind of interrogated. And I'm like, whoa, I haven't, like I'm just
even that. It sounds like you find that interesting. Like,
right. I'm open to the
everybody can be
experience.
interesting. Yeah, everybody can be interesting. You can have these different experiences.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I've learned over time is sort of what my needs are relationally, and I can get those in different spots. So I have different groups of people who I do different things with.
Yeah.
And I have a partner who says, great, I'm glad, because I know I can't meet all your needs.
Yeah. Does that extend to sexual needs, or you're monogamous in that way?
I'm monogamous in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll just say this, that I get myself out there. I have to be willing to encounter some of that kind of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, and this is, given the shows about relationships and intimate love,
yeah,
is that I feel like I've probably met, I'm going to guess a number here,
okay.
50 to 60 heterosexual women who I think I could be with.
Interesting.
But, I've already made my choice about that. And so what I can do, and when I encounter people like that, is just to enjoy the energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just, that's where I go with it, versus being someone. I've worked with guys who just, have been divorced like 7 times and, just have a hard time
trying to get right. The next one will be more perfect somehow, or
it's more exciting. Here's a new one. Mm-hmm. It's excitement.
Yeah.
And I get that a new person's always going to be a little more exciting because you don't know them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get to that place where you recognize, like, yes, a new person could be more exciting, but what are you valuing more than that?
Right. No, I agree. And I think ultimately I'm valuing my groundedness. I'm valuing, that I'm on a journey. I'm valuing that, in my world, at least, if I act out sexually, that may have consequences that I'm not necessarily, prepared to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I think if people who are in polyamorous relationships or who are comfortable, or both people talk about like, that's okay, then, that's okay.
Yeah. Right. If it's a conscious choice together.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And what I find is that even the energy, and again, I'm open with guys, I'm open with women, but the energy of attraction is not necessarily all about the physical attraction. Right. It's about sort of that psychological, emotional connection that I feel with a person.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's beautiful. It's so multidimensional.
Mm-hmm.
And even I talk about in my book that, sex can be all of those dimensions too. I write about the difference between 4-dimensional sex versus 1-dimensional sex, right? 4-dimensional sex, and sex not even just being intercourse, but the energetic, the emotional, the spiritual, all those different ways that we can connect with someone. And what I love hearing you talk about is that you're going out into the world. This is how I'm hearing it, so correct me if I'm wrong, right? You're going out into the world. You're bringing your vitality, your energy, your care, your capacity to connect with people and be intimate, and you're creating an amazing life for yourself, rather than waiting for it to happen.
Yes. No, I would say that's for sure. And I think that's my growth. Okay. I feel like my growth has gone from I'm waiting around, like you said, for someone to notice me or to be attracted to me or to engage me. And now I have I think the work I've done on myself internally is that I'm like my own best friend.
Yeah.
So I have a more of an internal sense of connection.
Yeah.
And therefore, I can meet other people where they're at and get something from those interactions.
Yes.
But I'm also not. Yes, I don't need it the same way because I have an inner dialogue. I have a complexity I have lots of different sides to me, a lot of different parts of me that I know are there. And so, there might be when I'm talking to someone, I feel the sexual energy and that part of me is going, oh, this would be great. And then I have the other dialogue going on and just enjoy the energy. Like you don't need to act on it. What happened with Janet when I met her all those years ago was that both of us had that channel. That door was still open because neither of us were in a relationship.
Right.
And we were both open to that.
Yeah.
Whereas, I'm a complex person. I'm in a relationship. I'm a grandfather. I'm all kinds of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. How would you say, since we're talking a lot about, out in the world, if we come back into your relationship with Janet, how do you keep that alive? I know there's that separation, the autonomy and connection. Anything else you can say that gives inspiration for how people can keep their relationships alive?
Yeah, I think it's really appreciating your partner as a unique individual versus someone who's there to meet my needs, or is there to meet my sexual needs, or is there to take care of me in some way. Yeah. I see her as having her own unique journey, and we have chosen to do that together.
Yeah.
Yet, and this is for me, I love that I can still explore, I can still experiment, I can still go do things I enjoy doing, and feel like she supports that.
Yep.
And I would do the same for her. I do the same thing. If she says, I want to go do this thing, or I want to take this class, I'm like, awesome, do it.
Yeah.
And that when we are together, we are consciously doing it together. Nice. Like it's a conscious choice, so that there's not this ambiguity of like, hey, I wish we had sex, and and somehow I'm waiting to see if she's going to want to, or whatever. If I'm going to go be assertive, then I have to say, hey, what are you up to? Here's where I'm at. And if she's not there, I have to just be like, okay, and not be like, oh, this sucks. I think that part of me can say like, okay, Fred, think about where are you at? Why is that need so important right now? So I just have a little more of an internal dialogue about that.
Right. And it sounds like you recognize these different parts, and you're not putting all your eggs in one part, right? That's like, oh, this is reality. This is the way it is.
Exactly. And so for some guys, and again, this is where the male conditioning comes in. We've been taught, most guys in this culture have been taught to be sexual beings, that if intimacy is equated with sexuality,
right,
versus intimacy being a connection.
Yes.
We make it a sexual connection.
Yes.
And that has gotten a lot of guys in trouble.
Yep.
Because they might have a sexual connection and have no other connection.
Right. I think that often is the case, right? Where then that's the way to get those needs met, because it seems feminine or weak or something else to have that connection in a different way.
Right. The other thing I see with guys is this fear of the vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so, substance abuse, other ways of acting out, even acting out sexually, sometimes are ways that guys are trying to like open themselves back up because they've shut down.
Ah, interesting.
So it's safe to be a tough, strong guy, and you're reinforced for it.
Yeah.
However, you have other needs. I see my 2.5-year-old grandson who's pure.
Yeah.
He hasn't
have to be macho or
built in like that. And so he just feels things. He's happy, he's sad. He wants to connect. He's verbal. He shares what he's, I know what he's feeling. And then we, as in our culture, we just kind of say that's not a real man.
Yeah.
Real men are tough and strong and have to shut down this like sort of vulnerable side. And through sex is when you get to express that.
Yes. Yep.
And that's a very limited way of being in the world.
Such a limited way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had a question. Let's see if I can find it. As you were talking about, you can bring your desire to Janet, or you could say, here's where I'm at. Where are you at? I can be assertive. And then, okay, if she's not there, you have this way of talking to yourself, this inner dialogue. Okay, what do I want instead? Or where was that need coming from? I think a lot of men who I work with have this sense of, if I'm rejected, especially sexually, it's so vulnerable that I don't even want to face it.
Right.
Have you worked with men around that? And how do you
Yeah.
support that?
Yeah. And I think, and what I end up doing is asking them and talking to them like I'm talking to myself, which is to say, what was happening in that moment? Why was sex so important right then?
Uh-huh.
What were you feeling? What were you needing?
Yeah.
Um, and then after that, are there other ways to get some of your needs met?
Right. Because I
Other,
could imagine as you said that, I started thinking, okay, well, I wanted to connect. I felt
yeah,
alone. I felt
exactly.
unsupported. And then as you understand that deeper layer,
Right.
how do you get those needs supported that it's not just sex?
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that the sex can be an expression of all of that, but it in itself isn't the whole thing. Um, and I do think that guys, again, our defense structure is set up so that for a lot of guys, it's stay in control,
Hmm.
be strong, don't let anything bother you, and we start to numb out.
Yep.
And so what? So a guy, like a typical guy watching football.
Yeah.
I'm a Philly fan, so I'm really happy about what
Very
happened.
nice.
So I was at yeah. So, but it was like all these guys. I was at this party, and everybody was pretty mellow. But like when the team scored, it was like everybody went wild. It was like, God, I love these guys, and I think that's why guys love sports.
Yeah.
Is because it gives them permission to express themselves. They can be angry, they can be sad, they can be hopeful, they can cheer, they can do all these things. And it's like cultural permission to be
Right.
yourself.
Yes. I've never.
And we need more of that.
Mhm.
You know,
How do we get more of it, or how do we give more of that to men?
well, I think, you do it, I do it. I think to put ourselves out there and in a non-judgmental way, say, I want to know who you are. I want to hear you. I want to see what you're about.
Yeah.
I want to understand. We had a great men's group last night. It was beautiful in terms of the way guys were sharing, and one guy's dealing with a loss. One guy's dealing with conflict in his relationships. Another guy, there was 10 guys in there. Everybody had something, and they were being open about it.
Yeah.
And getting support from the other guys. And that's kind of the environment we create in there. So
they
that
don't have to hide. They don't have to be macho. They don't have to have it all together.
Exactly. And the guys, again, like one guy's really in a sort of depressed state. And instead of trying to fix him, there were several guys in the group said, I've been there with you. I know exactly what you're feeling. Just feel it. Just talk to us about it.
Yeah.
Versus, I think most guys would want to go, get it together, fix it.
Yeah, I've got, this book or that resource.
Do this.
Yeah.
Right. And
which totally misses. And I think that can happen in romantic relationships too. Mm-hmm. I think women aren't set up to respond to men's vulnerability with compassion. It's more either fear or disgust often.
Yep.
Or like, right, if we fix this on either whatever gender, right? It's like, okay, we've fixed this and we can get through this, and then nobody has to be in these uncomfortable states. And
exactly. And this one, I'm thinking of one guy who talked about, he went to couples therapy he was talking about this last night with his wife, who's a very emotional person. Mm-hmm. And he broke down in the couples session and shared really deep feeling. And he was afraid. He felt a lot of shame about it. And both his wife and the therapist were like super supportive, and it connected them. And he was like, wow. And part of his story was that when he was a young boy, his younger sister got terminally ill and died. Oh. And the parents kind of withdrew emotionally, and he had to be a good guy. He had to be always there for them. Yeah. He couldn't upset them. And so he learned to be stoic.
Yes.
As a defense against just having somebody care about him.
Yeah.
It was like a way he got care because he wasn't a pain in the ass.
Right.
And I do think that sometimes guys grow up in either the cultural environment or the family environment where they're basically told, don't be a pain in the ass. And then the culture says, don't be a girl, or don't be whiny, or don't be sad. And so they have to find ways.
Very limited, right? Yes. Sense of, okay, what can I fucking be?
What can I be? Right. And then we give them like, well, you can be a millionaire, or you could be a hard worker,
Right.
or you can be, a sexual guy or something like that. Like those are your options.
Yeah. Ouch.
Yeah.
So painful. Thank you for, being able to hold space for men and for having the capacity to witness yourself and understand the complexity of being here and being a man at this time on this planet.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to bring, either personally or from all of your experience, that you think would support people listening?
Well, I think that we've gotten into a sort of bifurcated reality, especially with the last election.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's a way for, the next book I'm working on is called Strength with Heart, and Daniel's working on that. And the idea that you can be a strong, tough, passionate man, and also be an open, vulnerable, empathic human being at the same time. That's the next evolution.
Yes.
And right now, it's almost like you got to pick camps.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, yes. And I would say that we're hopefully heading to a place where we can integrate both parts.
Yeah. Yeah. I want that. And I think about that in terms of being a woman supporting men, and also being a woman supporting women, because I do think that we all need to learn how to make it safer for everybody to express and to be vulnerable, and to not then get, boxed or storied into, okay, well, fine, I guess this is who you are. So, right. You're only that. I think I see that with women a lot, this sense of like, oh, if my rock, my man, the one who's there for me and strong for me, if he falls apart, then what's left? Where the reality is, oh, if he falls apart, he comes back together. I fall apart, I come back together. We fall apart together, we come back. So yes, much more fluidity and less bifurcation in that way.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
I appreciate you having me. It's nice to be able to share, and I appreciate what you're doing to kind of put this out there.
Thank you. Do you want people to find you? And if so, where would they find you?
Well, you just look me up on the internet.
Great.
I've written enough books and have done enough things. I've been, I even got one of the things I laugh about is that when one of the football players, Jason Kelsey, retired from the Eagles, he was like a fan favorite. He cried, and some people, sports writers, were giving him shit about
really?
that. Yeah. And so I got to be quoted in the New York Times to say that it's okay for men to cry.
Yeah.
And so that was really sweet.
Not even just okay. It's like, it's part of our humanity, your humanity.
I know. It was almost, he cared that much.
Yeah.
Letting it go really was a loss, and he was expressing it. And that's
a great role model.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Okay.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Practicing Love. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and gained insight into yourself and your current and past relationships, and inspiration for what's possible. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review to help people find us. If you'd like more support in your love life, be sure to get your free copy of my best-selling book, Honest Sex, at shanajamescoaching.com/free. That's shanajamescoaching.com/free. And we'll see you next time.